just plea out. I get it. But as we heard from Nemo Romani, these folks, a lot of them are just true believers, and they're not going to give in. So they're going to exercise their right. They have every right to do that. But my feeling about it is, at the end of the day, when you start looking at some of these charges, people are saying online that, well, look at the protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters. You're talking about protesters out in Seattle, all that was going on out there. They're not being treated like this. They feel like they're being singled out. What do you think about that?
And they are being singled out because this is completely different. It's almost in diametric opposition from the Black Lives Matter, which most of those were very peaceful protests. There's a very good distinction between peaceful protests and a riot, right? The riot, it was violent. They took charge. They were on grounds. They decimated the property. And so that's a very important distinction in that I don't think that we can just kind of sweep that up under the rug and call it a peaceful protest, because it was anything but peaceful.
Yep, and that's the distinction right there. So anyone asking that question, that is the distinction. All right, Erica Wilson, I want to thank you so much for being with me this evening. Really a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll have you back again soon.
Thank you.
All right, you have a great night. It's been a pleasure being with you guys as well. Coming up next in Closing Arguments, Vinnie Politan takes a look at the biggest moments in Ryan Duke's pretrial hearing, and there were plenty of them, folks. So keep it right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
social stars influenced?
This dough is money.
And perfect for the fam. Get that cookie dough pancakes only at Denny's.
In Ocilla, Georgia, former beauty queen and teacher Tara Grinstead went missing in 2005. She has never been found. But now, Ryan Duke, one of her former students, has been charged with her murder. But the key to the case for both sides may be another former student, Bo Dukes. But the question tonight, will he ever speak?
Under the advice of counsel and invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
In Chicago, Illinois, actor, singer, and entertainer Jussie Smollett was convicted of a hate crime hoax. And tomorrow, he will be sentenced on Court TV. Tonight, we take you back to the scene of the hoax.
This has been an incredibly difficult time, honestly one of the worst of my entire life.
On the docket tonight in Sullivan County, Tennessee, the murder of baby Evelyn. The accused killer, her teenaged mom, Megan Boswell. Will her lies be enough to convict her?
I've been so long without her, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you report it? And I said earlier, because my mom threatened me, and I just want her back.
Plus, tonight's 13th juror question. Why? Why did he do it? Why did Jussie Smollett stage a fake hate crime? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And for those of you who've been watching me on Court TV for all these years, when I first started at Court TV, I was one of the traveling correspondents. And one of the best parts of the job was going around the country and seeing how different courtrooms in different parts of this country administer justice. It was also interesting to watch what cases were like when you went to a big city versus a small town. And I'll be honest, I enjoyed going to those small towns a lot better. I felt like there was much more of a connection between the case, the courthouse, the people involved, whether it was the judge, the bailiff, everyone, and the community. And there seemed like there was a lot more at stake. And the tension was a little bit higher because wherever you went in that town, everybody knew what was going on in that courthouse. And we've got a situation like that going on right now. The case was on Court TV today, big pretrial hearings. I'm talking about the murder of Tara Grinstead. Now, there are two people who are going to be big parts of this case. Two people who are alive. Obviously, the case is about the murder of Tara Grinstead, who went missing in 2005, never been found. But the two people I'm talking about are first the defendant, Ryan Duke. That's his name. I've got some photos to show you of Ryan Duke through the years. All the way to the left, that's from his high school yearbook. In the middle, that's when he got arrested for this murder. And then on the right-hand side, that's what he's going to look like inside and looks like inside the courtroom. So you can kind of see the evolution of Ryan Duke. Central to this case, obviously, because he is the defendant. But there's another person who is friends with Ryan Duke, or used to be friends with Ryan Duke, went to school with him. His name, no relation, is Bo Dukes. Got some photos of Bo Dukes. On the left, that same high school yearbook. Pictures right next to each other. That's Bo Dukes. In the middle, that's when he got in trouble for this case because he went to trial in the case of Tara Grinstead, not accused of the murder, but accused of helping dispose of her body. And then you see him on the right, a little more cleaned up. That's a much more recent picture from some other legal issues that Bo Dukes is dealing with. Well, Bo Dukes was in court today because, again, he has information related to this case that is crucial, I believe, for the jury. And I want the jury to hear it. I do, because I want the jury to hear as much evidence as possible because they've got to figure out the truth in what happened here and who is responsible. But Bo Dukes came in today and gave us a preview of what he may be willing to say if, in fact, he's called in front of the jury. Take a listen.
Mr. Dukes, did Agent Shaudel interview you first on June 16th, 2016?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
Did your lawyer set up a subsequent interview on February 19th, 2017?
I'm also not going to answer that question either.
And Judge, we do not believe that the fact that he had an interview would invoke his Fifth Amendment right to counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. I think anything regarding whether it was an interview or not, surrounding the interview, will go into issues that are still being still up for debate and consideration in other cases, Your Honor.
Anything from the state?
I completely with Ms. Mullis. These issues are on appeal pending before the court, and he has a pending indictment in Vinnie County, and I believe that is the correct response.
I'll give you the last say, Ms. Merchant, if you have any further argument.
Thank you, Judge. The fact that he had an interview cannot subject him, or did not have an interview, cannot subject him to criminal charges. My specific question was if his lawyer set up a second interview for him, and so we don't believe that that would implicate any Fifth Amendment.
The very indictments in Wilcox County involve those interviews that she is asking those questions about, and whether those statements were made, if and in those.
I'm going to allow the indication of Fifth Amendment privilege to that question.
Thank you, Judge. The interview that you had on February 19th, 2017, that was with Mr. Bowden, Mr. Rigby, Ms. Schwaltz, and then your lawyer, Mr. Fox, correct?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm also going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
And it lasted approximately 30 minutes?
I'm also invoking my Fifth Amendment.
Thank you. And was it during that meeting that Mr. Bowden told you that if you cooperated and you were not involved in the homicide, but you were only involved in the cover-up, that they would be in a position to help you?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to self-incriminate.
And it was shortly after Mr. Bowden made this statement to you that you made a statement that implicated Ryan Duke?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to self-incriminate.
Do you believe that you had a deal?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to self-incriminate.
In fact, did you then subsequently text friends of yours saying that you believed you had a deal?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
Would you have given Agent Shaldell statements if Mr. Bowden had not told you he was in a position to help you?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
Did you know Paul Bowden prior to this meeting?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
And Judge, that one I would argue does not have any incriminating statements, whether or not he knew Paul Bowden prior to this meeting.
Well, Your Honor, being that Mr. Bowden was the current district attorney in this case, any implications or testimony, anything that he had some sort of meeting with him or knew him in any way could incriminate him or lead to incriminating information.
Anything further from the state?
No, Your Honor.
I'm going to require the witness to answer that question.
Thank you, sir.
Personally, I did not know Mr. Bowden.
Had you ever met him prior to that day?
Not that I recall. It's possible, though.
Were you friends with his son, Josh Bowden?
Yes.
Had you ever been to the Bowden's home?
I can't recall a time where I ever was.
Thank you. No further questions.
This guy's in the middle of everything, worrying about incriminating himself. He's already been convicted in front of a jury, but yeah, he's got the appeal pending. But what did I tell you about small towns, right? The DA, he's friends with the DA's son. And what the defense is going as, hey, you're friends with the DA's son, the DA was going to give you a deal, and all of a sudden you said that you got disposed of the body, but you didn't commit the murder, because that's the guy I think the defense is going to point the finger at. Anyhow, let's get a lot more information now from Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae, who's joining us live from Ocilla, Georgia tonight. Julia, great to see you. All right, so tell us about this deal that Bo Dukes was being asked about and just on the advice of counsel took the Fifth Amendment.
Alleged deal. Vinnie, the prosecutors say that there was never a deal. They brought people into this hearing the last 2 days to say that there was not a deal offered to Bo Dukes. His attorney said there wasn't one explicitly, but there was an understanding of quid pro quo. And now with Dukes on the stand today, the defense wanted to ask him that same question. Let's watch.
Do you believe that you had a deal?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to self-incriminate.
In fact, did you then subsequently text friends of yours saying that you believed you had a deal?
Under the advice of counsel, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right not to testify.
Defense attorney Ashley Merchant there referencing text messages. We dug around in the case file or files that are associated with this case and found those text messages that talk about a deal. Now, this is between Bo and an unknown friend. This was a part of his Wilcox County trial when he was actually convicted of concealing a death. And the two are talking about why Grinstead's death was now really cracked open in 2017 after so long. And Bo responds that Brooke let it slip up to her mom. Brooke is his girlfriend. She tipped off the GBI, and through a long negotiation between Brooke, the case agent, myself, and eventually my lawyer and the district attorneys, we worked out a deal. And he goes on to say that it worked out well for me at least, and Brooke may get the reward, seeming to reference the outstanding reward that was there for information about Tara Grinstead's death.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Well, did Bo Dukes or Ryan Duke ever break their silence before this case broke open in 2017?
Vinny, there were multiple people who told authorities that they learned something, overheard something, were told something by Bo Dukes. You heard there his girlfriend, Brooke Sheridan. She's someone who testified against him in that Wilcox County trial. There's also the brother of Ryan Duke, Stephen Duke, who said that Bo Dukes told him that your brother killed Tara Grinstead. An Army buddy, a military buddy of his, John McCullough, is expected to testify that Dukes told him that he was asked to help conceal the body. Then there's another person, Garland Lott, who says that he overheard something not just from Bo Dukes, but from both Bo Dukes and Ryan Duke. Here he is testifying in a previous proceeding.
Have you ever had an occasion to hear either Ryan or Bo Dukes discuss the disappearance of Tara Grinstead?
Yes, there was a comment made at a party that I attended to.
Okay. Now, this party that you went to, how long after she went missing did this party occur?
2 to 3 weeks.
And where was this party held?
At the pecan orchard.
What was the statement that was made?
The statement that I recall was, we killed and burned her body, basically.
So what happened next after he overheard this? He went to authorities. And here's an excerpt from a GBI investigative summary where Garland Lott told Janice Paulk, his employer who was married to a deputy, about attending a party shortly after Grinstead went missing with Bo Dukes and Ryan Duke, in which they both stated that they had killed Grinstead and burned her body in an orchard. After that, later in this summary, Janice talked to investigator Morgan about 2 to 4 weeks after the search, and Morgan told her Bo and Ryan had been spoken to and that they denied killing Grinstead, instead only saying that they were drunk when they were talking. That seems to be the end of the follow-up at that point, but this was all in 2005, right around the time that there was still that active search going on for Tara Grinstead, Vinny.
Absolutely, and you know, it would have been a lot easier to recover her body back then rather than 12 years later when the case finally broke, but it looks like they had the information early on. Okay, here's the big question tonight. Will Bo Dukes be testifying at the trial?
We don't know. That is the answer. And we're not the only one who doesn't know. Even the defense attorney who's representing Ryan Duke wants to know what that's going to look like with this trial coming up very soon, May 2nd. Take a listen.
Before he leaves, I did want to put a different issue on the record, whether or not he intends to invoke his Fifth Amendment right if he is called as a witness at trial. At this point, just for planning purposes, so that we can figure out some evidentiary issues.
I'm going to let you and Ms. Mullis discuss that later at y'all's leisure. Okay, I don't think that's a proper inquiry at this time.
So So it's absolutely a possibility that Bo Dukes will plead the fifth. He may not even take the stand at all in front of this jury. The reason for that, and that was mentioned today by his attorneys, he has an appeal pending for the conviction in Wilcox County, Georgia, and he still has pending charges that he hasn't been found guilty or not guilty of in Ben Hill County for concealing a death, for hindering an arrest, and false statements to police.
All right. He is the key to this case, but I don't know who for. Julie Janae in Osceola tonight, thank you so much. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy. In Los Angeles, California, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. And in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer. Great to see everyone. Eklund, I'll begin with you in Georgia. Who needs Bo more in this case, the prosecution or the defense?
I don't know. We don't know what type of information he has. So it's really like, as an attorney, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. So we don't know what Bo is going to say. So I'm intrigued because it can help or it can hurt, but he's definitely not willing to hurt his pending cases. So I'm really, really anxious to see how this plays out.
Nima Rahmani, isn't there a way, if prosecutors want to call him, that they can get him on the stand? I mean, can't they give him some immunity to all this stuff? But do they have to give him immunity to the case where he was already convicted as well?
Yeah, many prosecutors can give him immunity, but you don't need immunity in this case if you're a prosecutor. You have DNA that puts Ryan Duke at the scene of the murder, and guess what? You have a confession that the defense is desperately trying to knock out. So all this back and forth, Ryan Duke's attorney is very aggressive in this case, trying to go after the district attorney, which, by the way, you rarely see district attorneys testify about a potential deal with a criminal defendant. I mean, that was just fascinating testimony here on Court TV yesterday. Prosecution doesn't need it. You got Bo Dukes, who invoked more times than Eric Trump. So just keep him off the stand. Keep your case clean. You got your confession. You got your DNA. You don't need his testimony in a case like this, Vinnie.
All right. Now, Eklund, don't get any ideas just because he's throwing that word out there tonight. You guys try to do it every week. I don't know why. This is a legal program. Has nothing to do. You've got 55 other networks dealing with that. Josh Schiffer, let me get to you. Who needs Bo more in front of this jury?
Oh, Miss Merchant and her client, they absolutely stand to benefit the most because they don't have the conviction already. They aren't dealing with an absolute loaded deck that benefits them because they're on trial for a case, like Naeem's saying, where the state has lots and lots of evidence. The benefit of Mr. Dukes testifying, whatever he says, it's going to be unknown. No one can predict exactly how it's going to fall, except that Eklund's right. It's all going to be self-serving. Miss Merchant was brought in because she is an aggressive, out-of-the-box defense attorney. We were baby lawyers together. I've known her 20 years. She is as smart as they get, and she's going to push the issues to benefit her client, and she's relying on the fact that no one can predict what he's going to say on the stand, and that could totally derail the state's case if it goes wrong.
All right. Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Josh Schiffer, they're with us the whole hour. When we come back, big celebrity case on Court TV tomorrow. There he is, former star of The Empire, or was it just called Empire? The Empire, I think that was Star Wars, wasn't it? Anyway, he's going to be sentenced for his fake hate crime. What? Yeah, and he's sticking to it. I don't think he's going to admit to anything tomorrow, but we've got a big, big preview, and Chanley Painter's going to take us back to the scene of the hoax.
First of all, I want to thank my family, my friends, the incredible people of Chicago and all over the country and the world who have prayed for me, who have supported me, who've shown me so much love. No one will ever know how much that has meant to me, and I will forever be grateful. I want you to know that not for a moment was it in vain. I have been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I have been accused of.
That's Jussie Smollett sticking to his guns about what happened, this hoax. It's an unbelievable story. The jury didn't buy it. He was convicted, but I don't think at any point he's ever going to come clean on the whole thing. Now, for those of you who don't remember what happened, Julie Grant has more for us tonight.
I'm just walking by and some guys, I don't know, they jumped him or something like that. And I just want to report it and make sure he's all right. What's really weird, man, just because I'm scared, I don't know what it is. They put a noose around his neck.
That was the 911 call that started the complicated saga involving an alleged attack against actor Jussie Smollett. The openly gay actor who starred in the hit TV show Empire told police that two masked men accosted him in downtown Chicago, shouted racist and homophobic insults, and beat him. Police body cam footage captured Smollett showing the noose that he claimed they placed around his neck before fleeing. News of the alleged attack drew outrage, but support for Smollett turned into confusion.
Jussie Smollett is beloved in Chicago because Empire is a huge show, the whole city of Chicago. So when I heard about this, I was appalled. And then as the facts started to come out, things started to smell.
Weeks after the January 2019 incident, Chicago police announced they were questioning two brothers, Abel and Ola Osindaro. Police said the brothers admitted that Smollett had paid them $3,500 to help stage the attack. A few weeks after the charges were brought against Smollett for allegedly staging the hate crime, Cook County State Attorney Kim Foxx abruptly dropped those charges, igniting a firestorm of controversy. A special prosecutor was appointed to examine the case, and a grand jury indicted Smollett on 6 counts of disorderly conduct for allegedly making a false report.
I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of. This has been an incredibly difficult time, honestly one of the worst of my entire life.
I don't doubt that. It's been a horrible, difficult time for him, but I mean, ridiculous story, ridiculous story. Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter joining us live tonight from Chicago, Illinois, in the area where Jussie Smollett claimed that he was attacked. Chanley, what can you show us tonight?
Well, Vinnie, it was about 3 years ago, January 29, 2019, when Jussie Smollett said he was walking down this road I am on right now around 2 a.m. in the morning. He stopped at this Subway right behind me, picked up a sandwich, and on his way back towards this direction where his apartment is, the Streeterville area here at that corner, you see the Souvenir City shop? At that corner, about a block or so, is where the actual attack, alleged staged attack, took place right here in downtown Chicago. I'm only a couple of blocks from Lake Michigan in this direction, Navy Pier, Vinnie, in this direction. And right now, it's a pretty busy area. But remember, this was around 2 a.m. that Jussie Smollett made these allegations, called the police, and what was allegedly a horrific hate crime.
Yeah, turned out to be something completely different, and the jury, came to their decision. Tomorrow is the sentencing of Jussie Smollett. What do we expect to happen inside the courtroom? And we've got and cameras will be in there, right?
Right, that is a big deal here because remember, during the trial, there were no cameras allowed during Smollett's trial and his conviction. But now tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern, at a courthouse about 30 minutes from where I'm standing right now in downtown Chicago, Jussie Smollett, his team, the prosecutors returned to that courthouse for sentencing. He does face a maximum of up to 3 years for each of those convictions, Vinnie. And there are several things that this judge will consider before rendering a decision. There was a pre-sentencing investigation report that took place that will likely reflect his lack of criminal history. The defense will put on mitigation, citing his standing, good reputation in the community, that no one was seriously hurt in this attack. The judge considers the severity of the crimes, of course, deterrence, restitution. There's actually a letter that the superintendent of the Chicago police wrote seeking that the prosecutors ask for restitution for the city of upwards of $130,000 to cover the cost that they spent just pursuing this attack when it happened for weeks. Overtime of the officers working to try to find those responsible for that alleged attack, Vinnie. But there's a lot of support still for Smollett. We expect to hear letters that were filed in this court from his family, his 92-year-old grandmother in support of Smollett, as well as Reverend Jesse Jackson, Samuel L. Jackson, and his wife. He's a famous actor, filing letters asking this court for mercy for Smollett.
Yeah, but I mean, prior to this, I don't think he did anything wrong. He was an upstanding member of the community, hardworking, in the middle of a great career. It's just bizarre. So let's remind everyone and remind me exactly what Smollett was convicted of.
He was convicted of 5 of the 6 disorderly counts against him. And here in the state of Illinois, Vinnie, that includes making a false police report. So there is a count for each of the times he lied to police during their investigation. So if we break it down, count 1 covered the fact that he falsely reported a hate crime. He told an officer that responded to his apartment those early morning hours that the attackers put a rope around his neck. Count 2 accused Smollett of falsely reporting a battery, referring to Smollett telling that same officer the attackers poured bleach on him. Counts 3 and 4 stemmed from Smollett making the same claims but to a different officer. Hours later, count 5 accused Smollett again of telling that officer that he was a victim of a battery. Count 6 was the one that this jury acquitted him of, and that was Smollett reporting an aggravated battery, which here means that these attackers wore a mask or a hood or some sort of robe. That's what made this an aggravated battery. But the jury decided to acquit him of count 6, and that is something, Vinnie, that this jury picked up on maybe, but the defense has definitely picked up on in their motion for a new trial, saying that makes this an inconsistent verdict, which means that maybe the jury had an inconsistent finding of fact. They're hoping that that would overturn this conviction because essentially they say Smollett told the same story just 6 different times to different people, and it wouldn't warrant an inconsistent verdict like that.
All right, tomorrow, big day for Jussie Smollett. You'll see it right here on Court TV. Chanley Painter will be there in Chicago. Thank you so much, Chanley. Let's bring back in the think tank. Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Josh Schiff are still with us. Josh, I got to start with you. What's the most ridiculous part of his story?
Oh, just the audacity of it all when it was so contrived. And there's so many different reasons that people have talked about what was his motivation for this. And there's questions. Is it a mental health issue? Is it a quest for fame? Is it some sort of attention grabbing? Is this the result of some sort of trauma that he had early in his life? And this was how he expressed it. It just doesn't make sense. And what is coming out of this is how serious his actions were. And I believe the judge is really going to take his time. The judge is allowing cameras in for the first time. That means the judge wants to get heard with this sentence.
All right. I'll tell you, Eklund Mercy, our political expert here, what I believe is the most ridiculous part of his story was that there were 2 people, immigrants from Nigeria, who were walking around the streets 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 a.m., screaming out that this is MAGA country in the coldest day of the year. I found that to be absurd, but that's what he's alleging, that they were just randomly doing and somehow ran into him and they happened to have a noose with them. I mean, the whole thing is preposterous. Eklund, is downtown Chicago MAGA country?
Well, life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And I feel like with regards to this case, we weren't privy to the trial, so I don't know exactly what pieces of evidence led to the conviction. But I just, with the facts of the case and, the facts of, the testimony that Mr. Smollett probably provided, it just feels like it's somebody who was, if you ever played the game flinching, like you ever just like made you flinch, and it's like that sense of anxiety, like something may happen to you, so you do it instead. I just had a feeling that, around that time, Black men were consistently being like chopped down by law enforcement, or we had, children being murdered by police officers. It was just back to back to back to back to back. And if you're a Black man existing in that time, it wouldn't be far-fetched to just want to stop the bleeding, want to stop the anxiety. It may be me. And and then to have something like this manifest is different. I don't know the facts of the case, so I can't call his story ridiculous or not because I don't know what was presented. But I think that there can be a reasonable explanation.
All right. We shall hear it tomorrow in court. Nima Rahmani, I'll give you the final word on this. Do you think what would better serve him? To just come clean tomorrow with some explanation as to why he did what he did, or stick to his story and roll the dice on the appeal and hope that a court overturns his conviction and a new jury will see it his way?
Vinny, he should come clean, but he's a narcissist who won't and a compulsive liar, and he's getting bad legal advice. And one point of clarification for both of you, Vinny and Shanley, he does have criminal history. He was arrested in 2007 for a DUI here in Los Angeles, and he provided false information to police officers here. He gave his brother's name. This isn't the first time he's lied to law enforcement. He's going to continue lying tomorrow during sentencing, or he's not going to say anything. And I agree with Josh. Judge Lynn is going to send a message tomorrow. He's allowing cameras in. He's not doing that to give Jussie Smollett probation. He's getting jail time tomorrow, Vinny.
All right, still ahead. On the docket tonight in Sullivan County, Tennessee, the murder of baby Evelyn. The accused killer, her teenaged mom, Megan Boswell. Will her lies be enough to convict her?
I've been so long without her, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you report it? I said earlier because my mom threatened me, and I just want her back.
Plus, tonight's 13th juror question, why? Why did he do it? Why did Jussie Smollett stage a fake hate crime?
606. Order now.
Evelyn. Hi.
15-month-old baby Evelyn Boswell, a beautiful blue-eyed toddler from Tennessee, being raised by her teen mom, Megan, goes missing with an Amber Alert issued on February 19th, 2020.
We remain committed and continue to do everything possible to find out what happened to Evelyn. And as always, as soon as relevant information and accurate information, I want to really reiterate that as it comes to us, we will get that out as soon as possible. Okay. Anyone with relevant information concerning Evelyn's whereabouts are asked to call 1-800-TBI-FIND.
But that Amber Alert was not issued on the day she went missing. Baby Evelyn actually disappeared in late 2019. And her mom said she didn't report her missing because she knew the person who had her and did not want them to take off with her.
I've told TBI where to find her in Mendota. My mom took her to a campground in a silver camper, and if they don't go tonight, I'm going to go find her myself. Just bring her back. I just want her back. That's all I want. I've been so long without her, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you report it missing earlier? Because my mom threatened me, and I just want her back. That's all I can think about is how much I just want her back.
But investigators were not buying Megan Boswell's stories.
Aware that we've received a number of conflicting, inaccurate statements from the mother, Megan Boswell, Evelyn's mother.
What happens next is a strange string of events. First, Evelyn's grandmother, Angela, is arrested with her boyfriend in North Carolina for possession of a stolen vehicle, which was part of the Amber Alert. Then Evelyn's mom is arrested in Tennessee for making false statements.
We determined that some of the statements Megan Boswell provided to us were false. Many of the false statements that Megan made delayed our investigations and also impeded our investigations on trying to find Evelyn. As a result, she has been charged with false reporting.
Any questions about that? Ms. Boswell, any questions about that?
Then big breaking news. 2 weeks after Evelyn was reported missing, a toddler's remains are found.
This evening, we received the information that led TBI agents and Sullivan County detectives to a property belonging to a family member of Evelyn's mother in the 500 block of Muddy Creek Road in Blumpville. During the search, investigators discovered human remains believed to be those of a 15-month-old girl. The remains will be sent for an autopsy and a positive identification.
So now the question is, what happened to baby Evelyn and who is responsible? You know, a big part of this case are the statements made by Megan Boswell and a lot of lies. The original charges against her, she was originally locked up for lying, and it reminds me of someone else who lied about their missing child somewhere down in Central Florida. Anyway, let's bring back in the think tank. Eklund Mercy, Josh Schiffer, Nima Romani with us. Nima, how significant are the lies? I mean, is there ever a reason for a mother to lie about her missing child that is innocent, that doesn't involve her being implicated in what happened to the child?
Never, Vinny, and that's really the theme of the show today, lies. And I'm not going to bring up that Florida case because I think that was an outlier, but we have so much information in this case. Boswell's lies. I mean, first it was dad, right, who was on military duty, then grandma, and those statements to the media. I mean, this is going to be a pretty quick conviction here. I think she's going to present terribly if she actually decides to testify.
Josh Schiffer, is there ever an innocent reason to lie about your missing child?
No, the justification you would need to lie about a missing child would be so great and threatening to you, you'd have to be willing to kind of sacrifice yourself. Lies become burdens. And when you're carrying that burden, you keep telling more lies to lessen that burden. I think that's what happened here. Lies turned into more lies, turned into more lies. I think that they are going to have a field day. Just like Naeem said, they're going to put this up. Jury's going to see right through it. And then the real push begins to really figure out what happened to this innocent child.
You know, there's another fact here, Eklund Mercy, is that the child went missing and and nobody reported her missing for months. I mean, for months, literally. And then when it was time to report her missing, made up this crazy story.
Yeah, well, as a former guardian ad litem, unfortunately, I've had the pleasure of representing like children like Megan, who has had to lie for their parents for like the whole time. So they've had a childhood in which they've had to lie for adults, and it's really hard to like turn it off. So I can see that being an issue. And I can also see, a child wanting to protect her mom and not, throw her mom under the bus. So we don't know the family dynamic. That's what's going to be uncovered in trial. But it's not really out of the realm of possibility for a child to be, groomed in the sense of lying, that the truth is not your friend, that, lying will make it better. Confrontation is a problem. So, I mean, if you have a person that's been, brought up that way, it lends itself to situations like this.
That was very close to that opening statement made down in Florida years ago. Eklund Mercy, you're giving me flashbacks. The good news, Nima, this jury will not be coming from Pinellas County. They'll be in Sullivan County, Tennessee, unless the trial gets moved. All right, here we go. Motions on April 7th, trial date September 26th. So this fall, Tennessee versus Megan Boswell for the murder of baby Evelyn. When we come back, we're going to talk about Jussie Smollett again, but we're going to hear what you have to say. And I asked, my 13th juror question today was very simple. It was just simply, why? Why? Why did he make up this fake hate crime? Why did he try to pull off this hoax? Your verdict when we return.
Get the real deal at drivetime.com.
You're filming us, right?
Yeah, this is all. If you want, if it's in his house.
They're filming you.
You're being audio and
Like audio. I guess when I mean, they didn't know they were walking. I don't want to be filmed. Okay, so can we turn it off?
Yeah, you're giving us permission to shut it off.
That was Jussie Smollett with the noose around his neck. It was interesting because if, in fact, he was the victim of a hate crime, there could have been evidence on there, like the DNA from the people who were responsible for the hate crime. But as the jury told us, it was all a hoax. So I posted on social media asking you a very simple question. Why? Why did he do it? We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day coming from Derek, who says, trying to stay relevant. Some children can't tell the difference between good attention and bad attention, as long as they're getting attention. Josh Schiffer, what do you think? Why did he do it?
It's really just, it has to be, like Naeem was saying earlier, some sort of narcissism. I can't put it up to a specific mental illness, but to exacerbate and focus the nation's attention on a false allegation related to the hate that the whole country was going through at that very moment is truly profoundly gross. And the fact that he has doubled down on it, continues refusing to acknowledge what a jury has found, it's just horrifying. Few things upset people that work in criminal justice like the abuse of our system. Prosecution and defense, no one likes to be played with. Mr. Smollett's gonna pay tomorrow.
Susan tonight, publicity, plain and simple. If his story flew, he'd gotten a big raise on Empire and settled his spot on the show. Nima Rahmani, you're out there in Hollywood. Is there such thing as bad publicity?
Generally not, except in this case, but Susan nailed it. This is about greed. Jussie Smollett was reportedly making $65,000 to $125,000 per episode of Empire, and he wanted more. And approximately 18 episodes per season. Here's someone who's making $1 to $2 million here in Hollywood, and he was a nobody before Empire. There are people who were desperately trying to break in to an acting gig, and this guy is one of the best gigs of all, but he's greedy and he wanted more. So Susan, I agree with you.
Thompson tonight, I know he's sorry now. Eklund Mercy, do you think we're going to hear those words in court at his sentencing tomorrow?
I don't know. I think that, again, I don't know the facts of the case, and I don't know what defense he provided, but I do know that it's also, as a character, as an actor, that although, yes, he did get the accolades, he also got the backlash. He was an openly gay actor on a primetime show. So the amount of hate mail he probably got, and the amount of things that he probably heard and people hurled at him beforehand, before the situation, that, nobody lives in a vacuum. So until we see all of it, until we're presented with all the information, I'm gonna hold my judgment because we weren't privy to any of it. So we'll see at the sentencing hearing what happened.
Brenda, he wanted to be recognized. I had never heard of him before, and he wasn't all that famous. Attention and sympathy is what his motive was, in my opinion. Josh, do you think there'll ever be a point where he'll get beyond this, that when you say his name, you might think of something else?
Oh, yeah, no. America's the land of second chances, and nothing will allow that more than the entertainment community. Anybody can come back from pretty much anything absent the Roman Polanski kind of stuff. This is a horrible thing.
Roman Polanski didn't he get a standing ovation?
Yeah, no, he's come back pretty strongly with certain crowds. Are you part of that crowd? Like, there's some crowds, those Hollywood people.
The Hollywood people.
Not my people.
Exactly.
We're in Georgia. Now, Mr. Smollett can absolutely come back. It would really help if I was advising him to eat the bad facts and change the narrative. We love redemption, but we need our pound of flesh out there. And he needs to really think about that with what he's going to say tomorrow.
All right, great job tonight, folks. Josh Schiffer, Nima Rahmani, Eklund Mercy, great to see you. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you. When we come back, folks, next hour, Cynthia Cole. She was missing. She was found in her own septic tank. Details next.
There's cash back in everything you buy.
In Martin County, Florida, 57-year-old Cynthia Cole went missing and was found dead in her own septic tank. Tonight, the autopsy results are in. Was she buried alive in that septic tank?
I can't believe that somebody would harm her in the way that they did.
In tonight's Unsolved case file in Nashville, Tennessee, James Perry was shot to death in 2017, but no one has been held responsible. Tonight, we're asking for your help in solving this crime.
I just want them to tell the truth and just tell what happened.
In Volusia County, Florida, officers going after a drug trafficking fugitive used some thermal imaging to catch their suspect. We break down the video with our own law enforcement experts.
10 feet in from where you're in. He's laying down in the bush, not moving.
And in Stockton, California, it's the Candyman gone bad as a candy salesman gets a homeowner to open her door and 3 armed robbers then enter the home. We'll take a closer look during Crime Time. Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of Closing Arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight on Closing Arguments. And we're going to begin this hour with the story of a 57-year-old woman who went missing. She was found after some great work by investigators, but unfortunately she was dead. She was recovered in her own septic tank. The question tonight is, Cynthia Cole, was she alive? Was she alive when she was placed inside that septic tank? We're going to have some guests coming up in just a moment. We've got the sheriff from Martin County joining us. But first, for those of you not familiar with the story, here's John Shainman from WPTV, our great affiliate down in West Palm Beach.
Lisa Steiger places a bouquet in front of a sign she left by her neighbor's garage off Skyline Drive in Jensen Beach.
Because I wanted to show my presence of, how much she meant to us in the neighborhood.
The body of that neighbor, 57-year-old Cynthia Cole, was found by investigators in her septic tank Saturday. She'd been missing since February 24th.
She would have loved the flowers and the butterflies. That's how she was. She was just very earthly, down to earth.
A handyman who did yard work for Cole, 34-year-old Keoki Demich, was arrested and charged with her murder.
By his own admission and by witness testimony and other information we have, he was at the house. And based on cumulative evidence, it does appear that she was probably killed soon after getting home.
The sheriff says although Demich was listed as a sex offender in Washington state from an arrest as a teen, he didn't have that designation in Florida because of a change in the law and had been friendly with the victim for years.
He was not on our radar.
An autopsy is yet to be completed, but Cole suffered a number of trauma injuries.
They had a monster machine digging that hole.
Detectives who had stopped by the home last Friday noticed a sewer pipe in the backyard that had a number of screws loose from the cover. An initial check spotted the body, and that led to the weekend excavation.
It just breaks my heart what happened to her. And it's just disrespectful, and I can't believe that somebody would harm her in the way that they did.
We've got some updates tonight regarding the autopsy results. The cause of death has been determined to be homicide, but there are a lot more questions that need to be answered. Let's bring in our guest joining us tonight. In Jacksonville, Alabama, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, forensic media analyst, and former senior investigator for the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office, Joseph Scout Morgan is with us. In San Diego, California, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jennifer Shen. And joining us tonight by phone in Martin County, Florida, is Sheriff William Snyder from the Martin County's Sheriff's Office. Sheriff, thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you with us tonight. What can you tell us? What's the latest information that we're getting from the medical examiner?
Well, thank you again for having me on your program. Since we spoke earlier this week, the autopsy was completed. Now, there are some results that are still not back, but the medical examiner is ruling unequivocally that Cynthia had sustained numerous blunt trauma injuries. So those would have consisted of blunt trauma to her face and head, her abdomen, and she also showed signs of asphyxiation and strangulation. And I know the question that's has been posed, I think, by you as the show opened, and I'm getting the same questions here. Was she alive when she was placed in that septic tank? The medical examiner is cautioning that she can't be absolutely certain, but she cannot rule it out. There does seem to be at least some evidence that she may have still been breathing when she was in the placed in that septic tank.
That is horrific, absolutely horrific. Joseph Scott Morgan, let me ask you about that. What are some of the ways to make that determination if Cynthia Cole was still alive when her killer placed her in that septic tank?
Well, the ME will handle this case just from the trauma that has already previously been discussed relative to the head trauma and obviously the trauma to the stomach and this sort of thing, the blunt force trauma. It'll be handled in a manner that you might not imagine in a case like this, but you're going to look into some of the facets related to drowning. And what we look for is in the airway, is there any evidence of any of the debris that might be associated with this septic tank environment that she had inhalated? If it's in her airway, then it possibly extends into the lungs as well. And since there will be solid waste product in that septic tank, as the lungs are carefully examined, not just in a gross manner, which means overall without the assistance of microscopy, you can see debris in the lungs there. But when they go down to a microscopic level, they'll be able to see little focal areas of deposits in her lung, and that would give you an indication that she had probably at least inhalated some of these substances in this environment. It's not beyond the pale to have somebody that is, say, rendered unconscious. They still have agonal respirations and this sort of thing, mouths open. They're in this environment. They can't do for themselves, struggling, and they're still attempting to breathe. So it's by virtue of that you inhalate what's in the environment around you.
Sheriff, how long do you believe she was in that septic tank before you and the rest of the investigators were able to find her?
Well, we know exactly. It was right at 6 days. We know what day she was out with her friends, came home, and by a mountain of evidence now, we've determined that the suspect was there waiting for her, and we know the exact moment we opened the lid and discovered her body. So, yeah, 6 days.
6 days in a septic tank. Jennifer Shen, you know, you're always looking for pieces of evidence in a death investigation, anything to link the victim to the killer. Your thoughts about this type of crime scene? Have you ever dealt with something quite like this, Jen?
No, thankfully I haven't. And kudos to the investigators for finding her. I mean, that's just a product of really careful examination of the crime scene to find clues like that. So what we're always looking for in this kind of scene, like a sort of a body dump scene where her body was dumped into the septic tank, was there anything that was dumped with her that can be connected back to the person that put her there? So did he throw down anything that was his or anything that he had touched or handled? Sometimes it's tools, sometimes it's weapons, sometimes it's a blanket or something that you could analyze forensically and then connect back to the perpetrator. So that is a really important thing in this type of scene, and I'm sure that's what they're doing.
Sheriff, you indicated that you know a lot about this case. Investigators have really put all the pieces together here. You mentioned that you believe he was waiting for Cynthia when she was returning. I think she was in town that night. Do you know exactly where this attack took place?
We're still waiting on some analysis of what we think is blood from the house. We use alternate light sourcing and luminol, which is a way to spray a substance in a dark room, and it'll fluoresce if it hits organic material. We think we have drag marks in there. There was no obvious sign of struggle inside the house. So oftentimes, and your guests have all seen it, when you have a large male, he was 6'2", a strapping young man. She was a diminutive woman at best, a small, thin woman in good shape. Wouldn't have taken much to render her unconscious. And there didn't necessarily have to be a lot of blood in that house. There was evidence that he had worked to clean up something, but 6 days, time was not our friend in this case, There was concentrated cleaning fluids that we used to clean up the floor. We still found evidence. We're waiting. We're pretty sure it's going to be blood. So the answer is it probably happened in the house. It probably was an ambush attack. She did not see what was coming, and she would not have had a chance in that fight.
Jen Shen, I want to go back to you. What would you be looking for inside that home?
Well, evidence of cleanup. People think they can clean up a bloody crime scene and we can't find it. And, luminol is a great tool there. It reacts with the invisible traces of blood at a crime scene and fluoresces in the dark. And so you can see, and not only can you find blood that way, but you can also see patterns that way. So drag marks are a great example. Sometimes we can see void patterns where there's blood all around an area, but there's one space that has no blood in it. And you can kind of recreate the scene if there's enough blood by using tools like that. So we're going to be looking for any sign of him in the house as well. I mean, if he's not a person that's supposed to be in our house, it's a pretty violent act, it sounds like, for him not to have left any clues of any kind. And sometimes amongst all the blood that's at a scene, there'll be one or two drops that belong to the perpetrator. And that always is, that's always very, very important evidence. So you're looking for what happened to her with this, and you're also looking for evidence of him in the scene, whatever that might be.
Joseph Scott Morgan, how would you approach the issue of trying to figure out the source of the blunt force trauma? What was she struck with, and perhaps the strangulation that may have taken place as well? How do you figure all that out?
Well, I can tell you, at least to a marginal degree, there's going to be some compromise of the tissue because septic tank is an aerobic environment, which means that to a certain degree, the process of decomposition will be sped up a bit in this environment because, let's face it, that's kind of the purpose of a septic tank. And so in that, the pathologist will be kind of at a disadvantage, but not too terribly. If there's a head strike, say for instance, and you've got an underlying skull fracture, you can still pick up on patterns. Maybe perhaps if it's a depressed skull fracture, maybe there's a pattern relative to that. And still to a certain degree, you can pick up on patterns on the skin, but you have to be very, very careful in these kinds of circumstances because the body becomes progressively more fragile as you go down this time range that the sheriff has mentioned. We're talking 6 days down range in an aerobic environment where she's already got possibly open injuries already, which is going to promote decomposition to a great degree around those focal areas of insult.
Sheriff, let me ask you, someone who is capable of doing what he's accused of, does that make you think that there may be some other victims out there that either haven't been found or maybe cases that haven't been solved that maybe you got to take a look at this guy perhaps being involved?
Oh, absolutely. We don't have any unsolved crimes in our county. Of course, we've reached out to other agencies. We also know we have a pretty good handle on his comings and goings. He didn't have his own transportation. We always ask, is there something out there that we don't know? How does the guy go from a single burglary arrest to something like this? We may never know what went on in his mind that night, but right now we're not on to any other crime that he may have committed. Now, I would answer one thing just to help understand that point about the decomposition. We're very used, South Florida cops are very used to badly decomposed bodies. I mean, that's what we do. If you leave a body here in a mangrove or salt palmettos anywhere, we'll get rapid animal predation, disarticulated skeletal remains. Well, we're used to it. This was really, for us, this was not that bad. There was a lot of evidence, and your ME there will appreciate this. We actually were still able to get fingerprints.
Wow.
Even after 6 days, yeah. So we had a lot of breaks in this case, and we really feel fortunate that we were able to start the justice process.
Absolutely. Joseph Scott Morgan, they still got fingerprints. That's a great sign.
Yeah, it is. It makes her particularly easily identifiable. I think the only other thing that I could come up with, kind of dovetailing with what the sheriff had said relative to this environment, if there's any trace evidence that may have been on her person that would have been transferred from him to her, for instance, that may very well be compromised in this environment, because this is a very, at just a biological level, it's a very hostile environment. So I don't know, what may be there that they could have recovered, but I'm sure they did a fine job at post on this case.
Absolutely. Sheriff William Snyder down in Martin County, Florida, appreciate your time again tonight. We'll be checking back with you as this case continues to develop. Thanks so much.
Call me anytime.
All right. And Jen Shen, Joseph Scott Morgan staying with us. When we come back, we're going to open up tonight's unsolved case file. Going back to 2017, when James Perry was shot and killed. No one's been held responsible. Tonight, we're asking for your help.
Now.
It is time to open up tonight's Unsolved case file. This is the part of the program where we ask for your help. These are cases that have not been solved. These are investigators that need tips and families who deserve justice. Tonight, we have the story of a 2017 shooting. 2017, James Perry shot and killed. No one's been held accountable. Emily Luxon from our great affiliate WTVF in Nashville, Tennessee, has the story.
Funny, love to cook.
When Lisa Fleming
Always call and tell you he love you.
thinks about her baby brother,
He was a good person.
she can't help but smile.
Love to tell jokes.
James Perry was a Nashville native whose love of food earned him the nickname Pac-Man.
Well, my mama said, what's that machine that go like this? I be say that Pac-Man machine. She said, that's who I'm gonna call Pac-Man.
The 34-year-old talked with his sister every day, but their last phone conversation still haunts her.
I remember him telling me, he said, Lisa, you know, if anything happened to me, I love you. I'm like, okay, I love you too.
In September of 2017, Metro Police say James Perry and his girlfriend were leaving a house on 12th Avenue North just before 5 in the morning. As they were getting in a car, someone shot him multiple times. He died in the street.
That was an evil person. Evil.
As Metro Police continue to investigate who shot James Perry and why, they say tips from the public are critical to the investigation.
We have some pretty good physical evidence that we collected at the scene. However, in order to corroborate that evidence, we really need one or two witnesses to come forward.
Detective Matthew Filter says even a small detail can make a big difference when a case has gone cold.
We want to see these cases closed just as much as the family does, because you've got a killer that's running loose on the streets. You don't know when this individual may kill again.
Lisa believes someone out there knows who killed her brother.
I just want them to tell the truth and just tell what happened, you know, and don't be afraid.
She hopes answers will finally come, as well as some closure.
It's been hard. That's my only brother. It took a lot of praying for forgiveness, but I just want justice served.
I know someone knows something. They need to pick up the phone and make that call tonight. 615-862-7329, or you can call Nashville Crime Stoppers, the Cold Case Unit, Crime Stoppers, either one. Make the call. Help this family. Still with us tonight, Professor of Forensics at Jacksonville State University, forensic media analyst Joseph Scott Morgan, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jen Shen, and joining us now is an anchor and reporter with our great affiliate WTVF. Emily Luxon is joining us tonight. Emily, thank you so much. Any information from police, any updates, any leads that they're working on? It seemed like they're onto something with some of this physical evidence that they were able to gather.
You know, the frustrating part is they just don't have much to go on. They did identify a person of interest very early on in this investigation, but nothing really came of that. So at this point, they are really saying tips are critical to this case. That's why they're making that plea to the public to come forward if they have any information.
Emily, was there anything strange or different going on in his life at this point? Because I'm wondering if this seems more like a targeted attack or if it was random.
You know, I asked his sister that same question when I interviewed her, and she said the neighborhood where the shooting took place, it wasn't odd that James was there. They had family that lived in that area. He hung out in that area a lot, so the fact that he was there wasn't odd. However, she did say that he had started to run with a crowd that was a little bit questionable, had gotten into some drugs, and investigators at the time of the shooting did say they believe he was targeted. So that's kind of what they've been going off all these years. But again, no witnesses have come forward with any information, so they just don't have a lot to go on.
Joseph Scott Morgan, I think we all agree someone knows something on this one.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, when I teach my classes at JSU relative to these types of investigations, I talk about the investigative funnel, where you're trying to narrow your scope down relative to the data. And there's a significant piece of data, and it goes to geography. The familiarity with the environment, that he was familiar with the area, but also the individuals that indwelled the same environment along with him. they could very well be familiar with his comings and goings. So I think that from a law enforcement perspective, them tracking down individuals that have a streak of violence in them, maybe or want to do harm, are willing to escalate an event to this level. And also, you know, when you begin to think about the type of weapon that is used, you know, what type of ballistic evidence can you generate from that? And is it closely tied to any other events that may have occurred in this particular area? And also the way this crime was particularly perpetrated.
Jen Shen, we did hear the investigators say that they did gather some physical evidence from the scene. What would you expect to find at a scene like this?
Well, it seems likely they gathered firearms evidence. So fired cartridge cases would be what I would guess. And the great thing about those, as we've talked about before, is that you put them into a database, and even if you don't get a hit right away, if that gun is used again in another crime, you're going to be able to make a connection at that time. So anytime you have evidence from one scene that connects to evidence from another scene, that sort of doubles your investigative clues, and it gives you a better chance at solving the crime. So I'm guessing it's firearms evidence, and that could be very, very helpful.
Emily, you know, sometimes in cases like this, there's rumors that kind of like, you know, there's kind of rumors out. Did the family say that there were rumors about what happened and who may have been responsible, and have they given that information to investigators?
Well, his sister told me she really kind of took on the investigation herself. She went back out to the scene. She walked that neighborhood. She went up and down the street trying to find someone that knew something about, you know, anything that happened that night. And she said several people would come up to her and say, I know who killed him, or so-and-so killed him. And she's like, don't tell me, tell the police. You know, we've got to come forward with this information. They need to hear it. Yet no one has taken the step and done that. And I think that's part of the reason she's been so frustrated, is she has heard those rumors, but nothing has come out of it.
Joseph Scott Morgan, it's been since 2017 now. Sometimes the passage of time helps people feel a little more comfortable or confident or safe in coming forward with information.
Yeah. And back to this point of geographic profiling. You know, in this environment, people would feel unsafe perhaps to come forward if there's a criminal element there that might be threatening. And as time does pass, people move on, and maybe that fear diminishes to a great degree, and maybe they would step forward at this point in time, particularly if crime in this particular neighborhood has escalated. Since that point, there's been an uptick, and people just get sick to their back teeth of it, and they want something done. And this case kind of stands out, doesn't it? Maybe this thing hasn't happened before like this, and they hearken back to that moment in time, and they say, look, I'm going to be the person that steps up, and I'm going to give them this key piece of information. You know, 2017 really wasn't that long ago, not compared to some of the cases that we cover. I think there's still a chance with this event.
Emily, could you gauge the confidence level from investigators? I guess the cold case unit has it now. Did they give you any idea, like, hey, we feel like this one can really be, we could wrap this up?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't get that vibe. I think they claim they don't have a lot to go on at this point, and that's why they were really wanting to get this case out there, get more attention on it, in hopes of generating some tips that might give them a new lead that they've been looking for.
All right, folks, it's in your hands. The phone number is there, 615-862-7329, Nashville Cold Case Unit, Metro Cold Case Unit, or you can call Crime Stoppers. Emily Luxon, anchor reporter, WTVF. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and your great reporting on all of this. Joseph Scott Morgan, Jen Shen, your insight is valuable. Thank you again.
In Volusia County, Florida, officers going after a drug trafficking fugitive used some thermal imaging to catch their suspect. We break down the video with our own law enforcement experts.
10 feet in from where you're in. He's laying down in the bush, not moving.
And in Stockton, California, it's the Candyman gone bad as a candy salesman gets a homeowner to open her door and 3 armed robbers then enter the home. We'll take a closer look during Crime Time.
And try it free for 30 days.
It is crime time here on Closing Arguments. Let's bring in tonight's guests. Joining me, former New York City Assistant Commissioner and former NYPD Sergeant Special Assignment, Dr. Keith Taylor. Keith served for 26 years as a public safety professional. He has supervised internal affairs, missing persons, emergency service unit, and Federal Emergency Management Agency urban search and rescue teams. And he's an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Law, Police Science, and Criminal Justice Administration at John Jay College. Also with us, former gang homicide detective Donald Schweitzer. Donald was a police officer for 10 years. He's investigated gang homicides as a detective, served as a member of the SWAT unit, and worked various narcotics assignments, and now comes to us from his law office. All right, great to have you both back tonight. Great to see you. We begin tonight in Phoenix, Arizona, Phoenix Police Department. We've got a situation involving an intoxicated man with a knife and scissors who stabs a woman and then gets shot by police.
911, where's your emergency?
Hurry up. West Coronado Road. The girl's all bloody. The boys chased him. I don't know what's happening. I just walked out the door. Please hurry, hurry, hurry.
Hispanic male wearing a black shirt, red hoodie.
That dude stabbed him. Turn down the first street. He's in one of those two houses right here. He has a knife. He's right there. Hey, get down on the ground. Get your hands out of your pocket. Drop it. Stop.
Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Drop it. Drop it. Drop the knife. Drop the knife.
822 David.
Throw the knife away from you.
30th Avenue.
Throw the knife away from you now. I need to get you medical help. Throw the knife away from you. Throw the knife away.
I'm here. We got suspect down.
Throw the knife away from you. Throw it away now. Throw it away.
He's got another knife in his right hand.
This is on the left. Throw it away now.
Okay.
Throw it away.
Chamizo was transported to a local hospital where he died from his injuries. The woman who was stabbed by Chamizo was also transported to a local hospital where she received treatment and is expected to survive her injuries.
All right, here we go. How many times are officers trained to fire? First question I have for you. Dr. Keith Taylor, when it is time to fire the weapon, what is the training? How many times are you supposed to shoot? So many times in stories like this, people are like, why did they shoot so many times?
You're trained to shoot to stop the threat. So you're not trained to shoot to kill. You're not trained to shoot extremities. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to use only the amount of force necessary to stop the threat. Sometimes, an initial bullet will not stop the individual or the threat. And the threat in this situation is quite clear. It's the knife and the scissors that this individual has, as well as the willingness apparently to use it on the officers. This might even be a case of suicide by a cop. So officers are trained to use the precise amount of lethal force necessary in terms of using their firearm.
Donald Schweitzer, I have a couple questions for you on this one. One, the response, everything happens very quickly as the officer arrives. And then the second part, where they're trying to make the determination of when we can go in to start rendering the aid.
Yeah, Vinnie, just following up with what Dr. Taylor stated, the officers go through various training, shoot, don't shoot, but when the bullets are being fired, you never know when somebody's going to be hit and incapacitated. So they tend to shoot more than once when they're in the situation here. And that's kind of the answer to your question. When they're looking at should they approach him, it's very dicey. This guy's holding a knife in his hand, and you don't know how lethal he's going to be. He was crazed. You could see it in his eyes. The officers pull up, they give him commands. He doesn't listen. And then what happens is that he brandishes both weapons in his hands, and he basically takes his own life. Vinnie, this guy should have listened to the officers. He should have put those weapons down and laid down and just submitted to them.
Dr. Keith Taylor, let's talk about the danger. You're pulling up to a scene. You've gotten some of the information on radio, and then you've got members of the public look like they were giving the officer some information as she was pulling up. And then you've got to physically, I guess, assess what's going on. How do you process all that information that quickly?
Well, in this situation where you're confronted with someone with a knife as well as a willingness to do it, there's a concern about the distance between yourself and that individual, and if you can possibly get any kind of barrier between you and them. And if there's not that possibility, how much time it may take for them to reach you. And so that's what you're processing in terms of what you're going to have to do next, depending on what they decide to do.
All right, Dr. Keith Taylor, Donald Schweitzer staying with us. When we come back, we've got more crime time, and we've got the sheriff down in Volusia County, Florida, using some thermal imaging to track down a suspect. We'll show you what happened next. Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Dr. Keith Taylor and Donald Schweitzer. Next story comes to us from the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. They're always busy down there. Officers here taking down a fugitive at night using thermal imaging.
He's going. He's going. We got eyes on. Head northbound. Just turn left, heading back to the LOI. Head back to the house in the cul-de-sac. Behind the house at the two corner. Behind the house at the two corner, got one male exiting driver's side door, running to the north behind the houses. Okay, head to your left, head to your left. Head towards the woods right there. Go straight in. Where your right arm is now, 10 feet in from where you're in. He's laying down in the bush, not moving. He's moving to your left now. That's to the north. He's heading towards 129 Pine Valley Court. 129 Pine Valley. He's actually in that backyard right now.
Show me your hands! Show me your hands! Somebody light him up. Where are you, man? Speak up! We're in contact. Speak up! And walk to me! Right here. Yeah, right here. What are you doing, man? Hands up! Well, I ain't dragging you out. You're way too fucking big for me. Roll over on your belly. Did you really think you were going to get away, man? I'll see you in 20 years, man.
That would be my first. Did you really think you're going to get away? They'll never find me in the woods. All right, how difficult are these nighttime chases? Donald Schweitzer, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Vinnie, I think he's been watching your show because you just repeated what you ask every time. These aren't necessarily any more difficult at nighttime. In fact, a lot of times they're easier because there's less traffic on the road. I find that when the traffic is really congested, it's not only difficult, but it's dangerous. And when the chase stops and somebody's running, I think that the darkness causes a dangerous situation for officers. They have the eye in the sky, but they could easily walk up on the suspect who could be armed, and they don't have the same luxury of seeing people in advance. So I would say it's probably more dangerous once the chase ends.
Dr. Keith Taylor, this guy, as he goes in that backyard, jumps out of the car, he says, they're never going to find me in the woods. Never going to find me there, but they tracked him down. What are some of the challenges at nighttime?
All kinds of challenges occur that during the daytime you're robbed of that ability to have that visual acuity of being able to see more of what's going on. The individual could easily be carrying all kinds of weapons. He could, absolutely try to attack the officers. Having this advantage of seeing, what's going on and having coordinated effort from the officers involved really makes it collectively a much safer process. And the situational awareness is heightened by the result of this information from up in the sky.
Yeah, I would just have a suggestion for those folks down in Volusia County. You're not getting away. The sheriff's going to track you down. He's going to do it. All right, I want to get to the final story tonight because I want to spend a little bit of time on this one. A couple different aspects. This comes to us from Stockton, California police. And homeowner is approached, someone rings her doorbell, and he's got this whole disguise on like he is one of these nice kids who's just trying to sell some candy, probably trying to raise some money for his team or whatever he says to the homeowner. But things go south very, very quickly. Let's take a look at this video of some robbers posing as candy vendors. Unbelievable. And he changed his uniform, right? From his COVID mask to his armed robber mask. Unbelievable. How do you track down these suspects? Dr. Keith Taylor, I'll begin with you.
You're going to be getting information. Obviously, that video is really helpful, but you're also going to be canvassing, talking to neighbors, trying to find out as much information as possible about who these individuals might be, the vehicle that they came in on. You are going to get that information out to your officers as soon as possible so that they can start the hunt to find out who these individuals are. And they may not just be selling candy, they may be utility repairmen or even pretending to be uniformed personnel. So these home invasion scams are nothing new. And, having the civilians have situational awareness is important to guard against this very type of thing.
Absolutely. Donald Schweitzer, the timing of it was fascinating to watch, right? He waits till he gets paid for his candy, and you kind of see him kind of like looking over his shoulder. He knows that they're coming any minute, and then they come in. Your thoughts about tracking these guys down? This is dangerous stuff. They were armed.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it tells people that you really shouldn't be answering the door for these salespeople anymore because it happens way too often. My feeling is that this group of rocket scientists decided to do this crime by giving up the point man, right? He goes in there without a mask, and he's in the camera. They didn't even see the Ring camera, and they decided to go forward with this. If I were the detective on this case, I would take this video and I'd show it to all the high schools around the neighborhood or throughout the community, and I'm sure they're going to find out this baby-faced kid and who he hangs out with, and then it's going to unravel from that point on. Very dumb, very dangerous, and it's horrific to look at.
Now, I want to pick up on a point both of you made, which is some advice for homeowners tonight, right? So just ignore that someone is there. How do you do it? Because we get kids coming to my house all the time. They're selling the little tickets. They're raising money for the high school and all this other stuff. How do you distinguish, or is there a blanket rule? How do you figure out when it's safe to open your own front door? Donald, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Vinnie, I think it depends on the neighborhood. I know in my neighborhood where I live, if somebody's coming to the front door, unless they're wearing a Girl Scout outfit or, somebody that I know, they're delivering something that I know, we talk to people through the door or through the window, and we find out, whether they're legitimate. But why are people going door to door selling candy these days? There's a lot of ways to raise money. You don't have to put kids out there, so you should be suspicious of that.
Dr. Keith Taylor. Any thoughts of wisdom for the folks who are watching tonight saying, wait, I just bought some candy from someone who came to my house?
Yeah, the kids, young kids especially, I think are not the ones that I'm worried. It's about the adult individuals that are pretending to be repairmen, phone repairmen, or cable service people. You can call up the company that they say they work for and confirm that they are the individuals who they say they are and that they're there for a legitimate purpose. And additionally, you can have install things like smart doorbells and have home security cameras just in case something does go awry. You'll have proof that you can give to the police.
I'll tell you, after watching this, I'm thinking, through my mind, I'm going through all the times that I've opened the door for like the guy who's in the neighborhood. Yeah, we're doing a roof down the street. We want to see, if you want to, here's our card. And I opened the door for these people. And I'm looking at this. I should not have. This is scary. Scary stuff. Well, great having you on the program tonight. Donald Schweitzer, Dr. Keith Taylor, great information, great insight, great experience. We'll see you again real soon.
Thank you, Vinnie.
All right, folks, when we come back, I've got one more thing. I need your help doing one more thing. We'll be right back.